Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Vital Signs Signaling the Future of the function being procurement. This comes from a study called the Pulse of Procurement 2017 that's just been issued. And this is the European edition with the particular focus and cut of the data from the study on the European market and the state of procurement in Europe. Richard Waugh, I'm your host for the web today. I'm Vice President Corporate Development at Zycus, and I've been involved in the procurement and business-to-business e-commerce space for a number of years, going back to my work with one of the pioneers in the space, General Electric Company, and pleased to join you for today's session. Just before we get started, I would alert everyone to the fact that as we go through the data today, please feel free to type in any questions that you may have in the Q&A chat box here on the WebEx platform, and I'll be glad to try to answer as many of your questions as I can. And before we get into the study and the findings from the study itself, a little bit of background on who Zycus is. Zycus is an end suite of software tools for the source-to-pay. This has been consistently recognized as a leader in this space, looking at Gartner's Magic Quadrant for Strategic Sourcing Application Suites, for example. In each of the last 3 editions of that report, this has been cited as a leader, more recently here in 2017 in February. And to shed a little bit more light on that Magic Quadrant suite for strategic sourcing applications, Zycus is featured prominently in the upper right-hand leaders quadrant. The report cited some key findings overall that Zycus customers that were references in the Gartner Magic Quadrant study cited a high level of customer satisfaction and consistently high scores across all the different modules in the suite, consisting of spend analytics, e-sourcing, contract lifecycle management, and supply-based management. And Gartner went on to cite a strong combination of functionality and platform capabilities, highly thought of product offerings as compared to the vendors included, as you see in the report here, and strong market understanding, company strategy, and market leadership overall. So that's a little bit about how Zycus is regarded in the space. And just to give you the full context of a comprehensive source-to-pay suite of tools that does consist of spend analytics, e-sourcing, contract and supplier management, Procure-to-Pay, and financial savings management. So a truly end-to-end suite, all integrated, natively and organically developed suite modular tools to transform procurement. Without further ado, get into this study. So every year, Zycus publishes the Pulse of Procurement study, and it gives us the chance to take the pulse of the procurement profession once a year on a global basis and really try to understand the pain and where are procurement teams making the most gains, what gaps remain, and they plan to invest for the future. Demographics about this report. First of all, there were 725 respondents to the study, which is a very large number of participants in this type of a research study. And why that's significant, I think, is it represents, therefore, a statistically relevant sample size. And you'll note that from a geographic standpoint, it does skew more towards North America, with over 70% of respondents in North America, but good representation in other parts of the globe, Europe and the Pacific, for example, with 14% of the respondent pool each. So in each case, you're talking about over 100 respondents. So just specific to the European market, over 100 respondents, and therefore still relevant statistical sample size as we take a cut at the data specific to the European marketplace. In terms of the representation by size of company, this does skew slightly toward larger enterprises, so more than 1/3 over $2 billion in revenue. But of course, the remaining 2/3 or thereabouts increased participation in our study, which over-participation continues to climb year after year. And this year, more and more companies that might be considered in the mid-market or high-growth segments, below $2 billion in revenues annually participating in the study. So it really represents a good cross-section of participants. And in terms of the types of roles various respondents are engaged in, almost a quarter are at executive level, so CPOs, VPs, or managers. And overall, about 2/3, better than 2/3 at manager or above. So again, a very broad-based study with lots of participation across the globe, good representation of procurement leaders that have broad visibility to what's going on within their own organizations as well as the market at large. So every year the study gets bigger and better and gives lots of great insights. So without further ado, let me start sharing those insights from this study. And we'll start with a view of state of procurement. What does the procurement print look like today across a number of different dimensions? I wanted to look at what is the relative standing with the organization. How is procurement viewed by C-suite, for example, and how mature is procurement organization overall? So looking at one of the first questions we asked in the study is, does your procurement and organization have a mandate to manage spending from an enterprise level? And here, 2/3 in Europe said, yes, we do have such a mandate, which is at or near top as compared to any other region across the globe. So it's in that respect, it's encouraging benchmark, to it begs the question, what are those 34% that say they don't have to manage spending at an enterprise level? What are they up against? Because you really would expect to have that level of commitment, from a strategic standpoint. But those numbers continue to grow as procurement takes on a defined role towards driving strategic results for the organization. Now, on the right-hand side was the question we asked about, how would you rate the maturity of your organization in terms of strategic procurement capabilities? And this is an area where Europe, as contrasted to other parts of the globe, really stands out as being far more mature in terms of their strategic procurement capabilities. So, fully 85% all, really actually 89% that are either extending their influence, considering themselves to have already achieved best-in-class status. So a very small minority, just 11%, that's really at the beginning stages of building that capability. So good news for European procurement organizations, relatively speaking, more mature, still a minority, 15% that have achieved best-in-class, so 74%, vast majority sort of in that stage of launch their initiatives to transform procurement, to drive more strategic types of operations and extending that capability, but striving to achieve that kind of best-in-class capability. So I wanted to know, again, in the state of procurement's present, what are the pain points that are most commonly experienced? And we got a smattering of responses, multiple different pain points that are challenges most procurement teams face. And right at the top, number one is poor information quality. And of course, lack of time and resources, number two, at 33%, come to view as well. But look at the number of different responses included here, from poor visibility into supplier performance. Number three, insufficient process standardization. Number four, lack of compliance, outdated technology. Number six, a lot of those do relate back to challenges with the existing technology infrastructure. You know, when we're talking about process issues, it's usually the root cause would be not having a standard technology platform to enforce and implement a standard process as well, and not having kinds of visibility across disparate data systems continues to be one of the big challenges that face European procurement organizations in particular. We want to know, what are you going to focus on in 17? What is on the radar, the top of the list? And you know, not surprisingly, when we do these surveys, cost savings always comes to the fore. 67% said that's our number one focus area. And that's in keeping with the traditional metrics ascribed to the procurement function. That's going to be the number one measure that's used to determine the success of the procurement team. So that probably never goes away. It's always there consistently. With continue to strive to improve procurement's process efficiency, the number one. So in next, those first two focus areas are really more traditional areas of focus for the procurement organization, sort of inwardly focused on, you know, what do we have to do to hit our numbers, to improve our process efficiencies. But what we see changing in 2017 with these top focus areas, as you go down the list, is more of an external focus. Number three, for instance, 40% said we need to do a better job of collaborating with other functions, other stakeholders and business groups with outside of procurement. Almost an equal number, about 40%, are looking outward, outside the organization, supply base, and how do we focus on improving supplier performance. Or next on the list, again, externally focused and supplier focused, doing a better job to manage and mitigate supply risk. And so, you know, more traditional procurement measures as we proceed down the list, increasing spend under management, contract utilization, enforcement, compliance, reduce sourcing cycle times, etc. So what really stood out in this data for the traditional measures that probably are always there, driving cost savings, driving process efficiencies, but what it is a view of the new procurement organization of 2017, recognizing that to the value to the organization, to unlock value delivery, and it's beyond things like traditional cost savings, they need to do a better job collaborating internally with cross-functional stakeholder groups and externally with supply base. Let's look then at what kinds of tools are being provided to the procurement function to deliver on this mission, to achieve those key focus areas that they're looking at in 2017. And here's some good news, certainly, that compared to a study a year ago in 2016, procurement budgets overall, the European market segment, are increasing. So we looked at budgets both in terms of the operating expense and capital, as well as headcount, the labor component, and full-time equivalents. And across the board, those numbers are up pretty significantly, especially when we're looking at either the operating or capital budgets, double-digit growth points in operating budget, 16 points in capital as compared to 2016. An incremental growth when it comes to headcount. So it has some clear implications for procurement as well, especially as regards technology adoption, because getting increased budgets for the OPEX and CAPEX with a commensurate increase in headcount really tends to indicate that procurement teams are planning to invest in technology to get that next wave of productivity, be able to accomplish those productivity gains without having to add proportionate headcount. Few organizations, let's face it, have the luxury of doing these days. So it really indicates a willingness to invest in the underlying infrastructure to improve procurement performance and increase productivity of the function overall. So we wanted to look at some key benchmarks. Again, sort of staying in the state of procurement, the future. How are procurement organizations delivering against some key objectives? As we said, cost savings are always sort of the leading and top of the list in terms of focus areas for 2017. And here we see a bullish outlook, savings overall. So certainly slightly higher for larger enterprises that have perhaps more resources in terms of staff and perhaps better technology platforms to execute. They're progressively looking at a 9% savings for small organizations and 7% for mid-size. So some variability there according to the size of the organization, but overall pretty healthy projections from a savings standpoint. And from a geographical perspective, Europe overall at 8% is right in line with the other areas of the world, slightly higher in Asia Pacific, which tends to be more emerging in terms of procurement capability, so more low-hanging fruit be picked there in terms of savings opportunities. But overall, a pretty strong bullish outlook for savings potential in 2017. Spend under management is another key, in fact, a leading savings indicator. For European organizations, the average is about 59% of spend under management. And the commonly accepted definition here would be spend that's either directly controlled or influenced procurement function. And relative to the other geographies, Europe has a clear advantage at 59% on average. So the overall global average being 53%, this for North America, and slightly behind Asia Pacific at 46%. So the good news, if you will, but just looking at European organizations, only 13% have achieved 80% or better spend under management, which would typically be the target, which would represent a best-in-class performance. So it's certainly, while Europe has made significant gains in increasing spend under management as compared to other parts of the globe, certainly an area for improvement. To go from an average of less than 60% to, putting 20 points more under management to get 80% or above, certainly represents an area for improvement and is, in fact, that leading savings indicator. So with having the spend under management in the first place, it would really be very difficult to translate any of the non-managed spend into savings, because you manage what you don't see, and you can't save what you're not managing. So spend under management is sort of that foundational metric that we look at in a leading savings indicator. Next, to contract compliance. And here there are certainly ongoing challenges across the board. This is the overall rate of compliance, the amount of the spend that's compliant to contract. So management is just one measure that says that there's accountability assigned, that someone from the procurement function is tasked with managing or influencing a category of spend. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily compliant, because there's a host of challenges to it to drive demand management to ensure that the actual spending that's going on in the organization is compliant to the preferred approved supplier contracts. And here, doing reasonably well at 54%, slightly better than the global average of 53, better than 51 in North America, and in fact, it's just slightly behind Asia Pacific, 56%. But in any case, and in any region of the globe, having a metric that says we're only able to have compliance for slightly better than half of the spending that goes on in the organization means there's significant opportunity for improvement. And here, in the European view of this data, there's a healthy contingent, 22%, that have achieved 80% or better compliance to contracts. So lots of evidence, therefore, that a highly compliant type of situation is attainable, and a significant percentage have achieved that, but the average performance lags well behind. In the next area, we wanted to look at technology enablement, and Zycus, after all, is a technology provider of a suite of software solutions, so very helpful for us and us to understand exactly what investments have organizations made in different types of sourcing and procurement tools. How satisfied are they with those tools, relatively speaking, and what areas do they plan to invest in going forward? So we started with spend analytics, and there's quite a high penetration. So 78% of European procurement organizations say we currently have a solution in place for spend analytics. We'll look then at what are their plans for investment, and in terms of the existing infrastructure that they have in place, how mature or effective do they consider that technology to be? So, first, when we look at the technology maturity, the acronyms represented here in the SOA would be state of the art, MOE would be middle of the curve, sort of average, or BTC behind the curve. See that while majority, nearly 80%, have some tools for analytics, there are more that consider themselves behind the curve than would consider their capability state of the art. So 20% behind the curve versus 18% state of the art, and of course most sort of themselves somewhere in the middle, not a leading edge, but not behind the curve either. And the net is a significant percentage still plan to upgrade their technology infrastructure to get better and more accurate spend visibility. To e-sourcing. Here again, relatively high adoption, not quite as high as spend analytics, but 65%, so nearly 2/3, say we have a solution in place. And relatively speaking, pretty high satisfaction. So where spend analytics those adopters are just as likely to be using some type of homegrown or legacy tool as are using best of breed. When it comes to e-sourcing, they are more likely to be using some type of standalone best of breed or a suite-based approach for sourcing as opposed to building their own or relying on the ERP tool. Certainly that translates to a higher level of satisfaction overall. 8% saying they feel like their e-sourcing technology is in fact state-of-the-art. There's 15% that find it to be behind the curve currently. Less, a second percentage, once again, planning upgrades, 18%, plan to improve their e-sourcing platform technology. Next was contract management, which is really striking when you look at sort of the dichotomy between the highest percentage adoption, 80%, say have a solution, but relatively low satisfaction, and in fact significantly lower. So percent have a solution, just 10% feel that contract management solution is state-of-the-art. Here again, that could be attributed to the fact that when we the percentages that are using more legacy type solutions, be it homegrown or ERP based, as compared to part of an integrated source-to-pay suite or a standalone best-of-breed contract management tool. In any case, in fact, that 80% already have a tool, a very large percentage, nearly a third at 32%, are planning to improve and upgrade their contract management infrastructure. So clearly that's a direct correlation to the relatively low satisfaction currently realized from the existing infrastructure for contract management. Again, high adoption, better than 2/3 solution, and reasonably high satisfaction levels. Here, again, this correlation to a higher percentage using either a standalone best-of-breed or an integrated suite-based approach for Procure-to-Pay, driving a higher percentage to rate their current infrastructure as state-of-the-art. So 1/4 of say, we think we have a state-of-the-art P2P tool. P2P being so foundational to process efficiency and cost savings, however, a significant percentage, again, plan to continue to invest. Nearly 1/4 are planning upgrades to their Procure-to-Pay technology as well. Look at a full end-to-end enterprise-grade kind of suite approach for source-to-pay. It's not the functional applications and spend analytics, sourcing, contract management, supplier management, etc., but it's all sort of a variety of tools that have come into vogue for overall project management to track various category projects and savings projects from cradle to grave, request management tools to be able to make procurement function more accessible to the other functions in the business, to be more customer-centric procurement standpoint to internal customers, so that there's a way for end users in the business to engage the procurement function across a variety of requests, to initiate a project, start negotiating a contract, onboard a supplier, assist with a supplier assessment or quarterly business review, and creating a scorecard. A variety of ways to engage the procurement function and allow an end user to track the status of that request. And last but not least, savings tracking. So Well, request management tends to be a more recent phenomenon. Savings tracking is something that most procurement organizations have been doing for years and years, because after all, that's what they're measured on. So they have to report cost savings. While that is nothing new, what is new is doing that through a series of spreadsheets that are difficult to maintain, sort of version control and consistency around savings calculation methodologies and track the approvals from finance to approve that the savings were actually realized. What's new is more enterprise-level kinds of tools to replace those earlier sort of homegrown spreadsheet systems to do this on a more consistent and enterprise-wide basis to track and approve savings realization. So these are activities that most organizations are performing in some way, shape, or form. And see, 62% have some type of project management capability. 68% say they have ability for seeing requests from stakeholders and tracking requests, and nearly 3/4 say we're doing something in the area of savings tracking and financial savings management and measurement. These areas, though, are the most likely to be managed through a variety of legacy tools, either spreadsheet applications, homegrown applications, or ERP tools. And what's coming is a significant plan to invest in these capabilities, the highest of the three being a third that say we plan to upgrade our request management capability to do more customer-centric procurement type of role and be more responsive to internal stakeholders across the organization. So that's the high water mark, but better 20% planning to invest a lot in savings tracking and project management capabilities as well. Rounding out our view here of technology, we wanted to look at, based on, we looked at each different functional area and what the considered their current capabilities to be state-of-the-art or behind the curve or just somewhere in the middle, but to look at overall what kind of value organizations realizing from their existing technology infrastructure. So the question being, when considering your company's total available procurement technology portfolio, what's the percentage of the capabilities that are actively being utilized? And here, the average for Europe at or near the top, right there alongside Asia Pacific, and better than the global average and North American average overall. 53% of the capabilities on average are being utilized. So different ways to look at that. It's right around the 50% mark. So the glass is either half full or empty. But really speaking, for different types of software applications across the board, some is that users typically only use 20 to 30% of the functionality in software tools. So when it comes to the procurement tools, my perspective, one perspective anyway, is that 53% is actually pretty good. Certainly can always indicates that there's room for improvement, but it does say that even their procurement users are not always enamored of their current technology, as reflected by the percentages that consider their capabilities state-of-the-art or better. They're making the most of what they have, relatively speaking. So it also indicates that where they're planned to upgrade in the latest state-of-the-art tools, the likelihood is that the users will, by and large, readily adopt and make use of the capabilities embedded in those state-of-the-art technologies. So that's certainly encouraging. Now, when it comes to lower adoption, why is there 47% that's not currently being utilized fully technology capability standpoint? Some of the reasons cited, not too surprising. It's less about challenges with the difficulty of the technology not being easy to use, for example. The bigger issue tends to be change management overall. That a disruptive technology sort of about or focuses on behavior change that has to happen, and usually the technology curve is somewhat ahead of that which many organizations can assimilate the various changes, and so there's some latency or lag time there. So it's more, the predominant reason, 42% say it's driving change management, or it's the training and learning that is needed. Shorten that curve in terms of the adapting to the changes and so on. Much more so than just in terms of feature function being difficult to use, or perhaps not relevant or not needed on daily tasks. So, finally, to look at the future of procurement. So we got a good sense of procurement fit from a strategic standpoint within the organization. What kinds of progresses have been made towards maturing the procurement organization and function, driving towards best-in-class type performance? We took some benchmarks to see where organizations rate across those different performance metrics, and we certainly looked at the state of technology adoption and plans for the future. But just to get a vision, a complete picture from our Pulse of Procurement study is what is that vision for the future of the function on the actual practitioners themselves. So we said, first, what changes do you see in the procurement domain in the next 5 years? And got a variety of responses. There are some quotes included here that, future procurement technology reaches the next level. Everything will be online, enhancing the global business chain. More automation, ethical tasks and delegation to requesters. So more empowerment, more self-service, more emphasis on contract negotiation, and warning that companies that do not adapt to technological advances will be left behind in some way, shape, or form. And certainly part of that is a shift from labor-based assessment processes to less manual, cloud-based, and automated processes. So clearly a technology vision for the future. And in fact, overall, almost 60%, 58% of responses focused, as these quotes did, on technology being the biggest significant driver of change. So compared to, let's say, traditional responses that would be independent of technology, looking at things like relationship management or strategic transformation and organizational maturity, competitiveness, or outsourcing. So all, of course, will be key factors in the future of procurement, but the overwhelming view of the respondents in the study was that the driver to change is disruptive technologies that are going to change the nature of the procurement function in profound ways, really replacing that tactical manual activity with more analytical, more automated, and I think more strategic focus for procurement, which overall I think would have to be viewed as a very positive trend for the future. We also asked folks to give us a wish list for things that you'd want to see in the technology domain that would innovate significantly, that would automate core processes and make you more effective in your role as a procurement professional. We got a variety of responses that really, overall relate to how the technology needs to continue to evolve to support the mission, whether that's the type of visibility inherent in dashboard reporting and guided buying that really provides the decision support to make better buying decisions, whether that's a procurement user or an end user that's empowered through a Procure-to-Pay tool, for example. Optimizing the user experience, so emulating that consumer-type experience that we all have on a frequent basis, shopping at Amazon as an example, making that enterprise buying experience more consumer-like, improving integration across applications to get full data visibility and transparency, looking at life cycle management, whether that be category life cycles or supplier life cycles, and just be able to act in an agile and nimble manner, shortening the idea to market and replacing the outdated systems that don't adequately support strategic sourcing and category plans. A few more. We heard we want an all-in-one solution, an integrated suite. We want at the fingertip access to analytic data in the form of push-button reports that are customized and tailored to our business, and better improved forecasting integration. So we want analytic capability to be less active and just looking at past buying patterns and those kinds of things, and be more predictive and proactive to be able to take advantage of market opportunities sooner, and also be able to maximize savings opportunities, things like dynamic discounting, so going beyond just negotiated cost savings, including the financing aspects of the procure-to-pay process, with being able to capture and maximize early discounts as an example. So lots of great thoughts and feedback from folks included in the survey that looking towards the future of procurement, really looking towards technology to enable that vision to really become much more strategic going forward. So those were the results of our study, and I did have some questions that I wanted to cover here before we close today. So one, of course, was, and I neglected to mention, that you will be getting a copy of the presentation. There was a question, could we get the presentation? Yes, you'll be, all the attendees today will receive the slides from the presentation, a link to the recording of the webinar, and you will have access to be able to download the full report of the procurement research study as well. A question that came in, to what extent are we talking here about direct materials rather than pure indirect procurement? So a good question here. And the fact is not segregated between direct and indirect. So really all procurement, direct and indirect, is in scope here and in context. Naturally, with a cross-section of organizations, including both manufacturing and services businesses, in certain segments and certain services organizations, there really wouldn't be direct material. But where manufacturing, both discrete and process, are included, certainly direct materials is included as well. One other comment I'd make, though, is that speaking when organizations are looking at how do we get advanced analytics and better tools and better visibility, they are talking about more of an indirect focus, because historically direct materials have been very closely managed, tends to be a smaller, more finite group of well-vetted and quality strategic suppliers. So while the focus does include both direct and indirect, many organizations, when talking about improving capabilities, oftentimes are focused, see the greatest opportunity for cost savings or a process improvement standpoint be on the indirect material side. But we really are talking about both of those. So the last question actually related back to one of our slides that really focused on the budgets, relatively speaking, from procurement budgets from 2017 as compared to 2016. And the question was, how do you get to plus 11 from up 35 down 29? So that the plus 11 actually compared the 2017 budget to 2016. So it was year over year, up 11 points, whereas just within the 2017 year, 35% saw their budgets increasing versus 29% decreasing. So that differential, of course, being 6 there, but 11 points year over year. So those are all the questions I had for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the Pulse of Procurement webinar, and a follow-up where you'll get the link to the recording, the slides from today's webinar, as well as an opportunity to get a download of the full report from the day. Hope you found this valuable. Hope you participate. Well, you may have participated in this year's study, but please participate in future years as the respondent pool continues to grow and the value gleaned from the insights increases accordingly, and we appreciate your participation in that research study and in today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone.